She Quest Podcast is heart-opening dialogues for self-identified women on a She Quest, a movement moving forward, striving to live aware, bold, and whole. Welcome. May Saraswati, goddess of knowledge, who is praised by the wise, who is the wife of the creator, reside on my tongue. Hymn to Saraswati. Hi, She Quest. Welcome to She Quest Podcast. I'm your host, Estelle Thompson. A brand new month here at She Quest. This next series of podcast shows is titled Waking Our Voices, Self-Expression as Medicine, and as per our monthly membership guide, the Saraswati Initiation. This month, we explore and dive deep in the world of our voices, self-expression, insights, and inspiration. And for me, that means going beyond seeing our voices or self-expression as just the words that come out of our mouths, but seeing the big full spectrum picture of our communicative and intuition style. And perhaps most importantly, seeing one's own self-expression and creativity as one's own aliveness, personality, feelings, ideas, speech, body, and the arts. This month in my solo show, I want to speak of my own Saraswati initiation. Who is Saraswati and how can she help with your insight, inspiration, and living the creative way of life? My hope is this, that through this podcast and our guests this month and our many soul inquiry through yoga and art that is suggested on your course platform, that you start seeing the necessity of self-expression and find new ways to communicate confidently who you are. Because being on the She Quest is striving to live aware, bold, and whole, I always start with this inquiry. What makes me feel alive today? And today is a good night's sleep, fresh white snow on the ground, and coffee. Om Shri Saraswati Namaha is a mantra I've used for many years now to call in the goddess Saraswati, a figure and archetype who has truly been an instrumental goddess in my feminine rising. But who is this Sarah what? And what does she have anything to do with me stepping in more fully into my voice and creativity? Okay, so first I will assume that you have listened to episode 7 of the podcast titled Normalizing Self-Expression and its Connection to Resiliency, where I talk about my take on women's voices and how they matter more than ever before. I also talk about how finding your voice is really about listening to your intuition. So if you haven't listened to that episode, you might want to give it a quick listen before you dive deep into this episode, the Saraswati Initiation. In 2013, I had a life-shifting experience. I was exhausted from a season of motherhood that I often call the blur. I was disenchanted by my yoga practice and yoga teaching. I was finding myself a bit of a robot in my studio-led classes. In March of that year, I decided to go visit my dad, whom you've met previously on the show, and attend a Wanderlust festival in Hawaii where thousands of yogis gather and where the best of the best yoga teachers teach. Here, I attended my first ever yoga and creativity combo class. Right at the door, we were gifted a postcard with the goddess Saraswati on it. If that wasn't magic enough, I met the teacher, Amanda. I always grew up, her last name is Guacamole, I think, who is a visual artist and renowned yoga teacher, whom for the first time in my life, she was teaching me that in fact, we are all creative. And in times of blockage or blondness, you can call upon the goddess Saraswati, or also known as the flowing one. This class was such a turning point for me in my career and, to be honest, in my life in general. It felt like a crash course in inspiration because I was sitting there and I kept hearing the message, "This is what you will teach others." And I had no choice. I was left with no choice but to listen. I was sitting there with the Saraswati postcard in my hand, and I was starting to really awake my authentic, my self-expression, what wanted to come out of me. What I discovered after that afternoon was that inspiration is always there. It's always available. That I didn't need to travel to Hawaii with 2 babies in tow to find it. What I needed was the motivation to seek it and the container to hold it. After that afternoon, I started sketching symbol cards and I started teaching with them, which what I came to realize was the cards were just imbued with intention. And some of you have probably been gifted one by me or done one of my yoga classes or retreats where I lead from an intention or a word or a card, and which, by the way, is really just inspired from that Saraswati postcard that I once received at Wanderlust that, was so moving for me. Not just this, but this has evolved into like all my oracle decks of cards now. Some of you have the she deck or the mama deck or the baby deck. All the various and numerous sacred symbol card I've created as well. And this all stems from that fateful class, way back in 2013, where sitting there, I was really open for the inspiration to run through me, and I was able to turn my life around and run with that and make it my own. Hey there, interrupting this incredibly heart-opening episode to let you know about my new art channel. If you're listening to this podcast as a She Quest member, this feature is included in the membership sisterhood community. Yay! More than 21 days of mindful art classes and curated topics for each class, such as 21 days of birds and butterfly, 21 days of love and loss, 21 days of women in power, and so on. Classes and programs are being uploaded on a monthly basis. If you aren't part of the membership and would like to try the art channel, this option is now available. Use the coupon SHEART, that's SHEART, all big letters, to get 1 month free. And tell the women and men you know and love about this stunning opportunity to develop a home art practice. She Quest membership doors will open again in January. But until then, enjoy my art channel and say yes to creative living, yes to showing up, and yes to connection. Now back to our ever expanding conversation. Because I know now Saraswati and what she does, I quite literally, I'm embodying Saraswati. And now, in the state, in where I am now in my evolution, on my She Quest, I believe I can never not be inspired. Never. And when I've somehow convinced myself that I am uninspired, I call upon Saraswati and she delivers me instantly. The Saraswati woman's path is very much the She Quest path. So, wait. Why is Saraswati so important? You see, in the yoga pantheon, Saraswati is the goddess who flows and helps you with language, insights, and sound. In her just amazing book, Awakening Shakti, Sally Captain writes that Saraswati Shakti will often show up in moments of sudden understanding, not unlike my awakening that day at the festival. The energy of Saraswati is passionate and exciting, and there is an uncanny clarity about it. The great Hindu teachers say that when Saraswati gives us her blessing, a dumb person becomes a poet. Saraswati women are unconventional and inconvenient, and they have no rules. Saraswati has this quality that helps you, brings you back to life. She's present when you set yourself an intention, when you claim that you want to feel this thing, when you voice what you want, when you tell your story. And your story is, in fact, your voice. And I hope that I'm always be clear on that. If you don't think you have a voice, then you don't think you have a story. And if you're alive, you have a story. I love this line best of Sally Kepton's book that says, Saraswati will give us the words that open our hearts, loosen stuck energy, help us partner with the flow of reality, and live in mantras, and show us the pathway in the fertile depths of creative stillness. So, what is your relationship to the goddess of speech and insight? So I found, and that's personal to me, and there's many ways to kind of tap into your intuition, but I find for me, there's 3 ways in which I practice my own intuition. One of the ways for sure is by journaling, stream of consciousness, uninterrupted flow of writing, kind of automatic writings. I've often heard it called as like kind of regurgitating, like anything that's on your consciousness. So writing is one for sure where you practice intuition. Another one has been deep interior listening. And this one is the hardest for me. Like it requires a lot of patience. It requires I do my daily sadhana, like at least minimum of like 5 minutes meditation a day. And the last one, I call it the seer because, and this stems really because I'm such a visual person. Many times in my life, I've been able to see my intuitive download. Like I have vision, for example, even when I was like in my early 20s, I had this vision of me going to work in France. And it's not like until, 10, almost 15 years later that I was living my vision, but I had really I had seen that for myself. And so, and I want to tell you something important here because I've been such a, recovering, being such a perfectionist. These 3 ways of practicing my intuition, I've often led me astray because my writing was never perfect and my sitting still was never perfect or long enough. And my seeing things seems so out there. Like, but once I decided to just show up with all my grumpiness and all my less than and all my what's imperfect about me, it's really then that I truly started listening and welcoming the Saraswati that's always been inside me, And for me, showing up this way through journaling and sitting and visioning, that vision work. Really works, really works. And I'd say, and I use movement as well, but I feel um, it's like the aftermath of doing yoga or shaking and dancing and all that stuff. It's the release after that then I can access journaling. I can access what we've talked about, vision and listening, listening to that whisper is there. So it is clear for me now that to be courted by Saraswati on the daily, I need to be aroused from above so as below, meaning that true inspiration can and will show up at random times for sure. Like that happens, like this whole cliche things like, the electricity from the sky and like you're hit with this ha moment. Totally, that exists, but only if you're open to it, But for me, like 95% of the time, inspiration has come up as a result of my own daily effort in coaxing the muse every single day. In studies of creative arts and scientific art even, there are evidence that Sally Kepton points out that says that the great inspiration comes to people whom put endless hours of practice or contemplation in their work. And I say scientific art, scientific art, like I'm thinking of the greats, Einstein and Socrates, and every day they would work, and then the theory would come alive, and then this would make sense, and then the equation would work. One writer calls it aspiration. Meaning that it comes from keeping your ass down on a chair for a certain amount of time until Saraswati pours through you and out. I love that. Aspiration. Love it. Achiquest. This is what we mean by a strong container. Or I often call it, some of my language around that has been through gardening, like tending to your garden, Inspiration comes from above and from below. And if we go back to the gardening, exercise, the best blooming of your garden will really happen when the soil has been loved and worked, and the weeds have been plucked out, so that the most blossoming can happen this way. So I'll repeat this. Inspiration comes from above, sure, but from below as well. And we need to be present, aware, and alive for the inside, from the inside, to receive its magical guidance. This week, our grounding practice is called the Saraswati Initiation. And it's exercise that can be done in two ways. The first exercise is using the mantra I personally use, Om Shri Saraswati Namaha. Om Shri Saraswati Namaha. And over again, you can repeat that mantra to yourself. You can either sit down comfortably and repeat this mantra. And the second way is to sing it. Om Shri Saraswati Namaha. But seriously, any singing mantra you would use, and I've introduced so many in all my solo shows, with access to the quality of Saraswati. Singing is a big one for Saraswati for sure. Mantra work, nada or sound yoga it's called. As a public speaker, yoga teacher, and painter, I call on Saraswati all the time when I want my ideas to be carried out, and when I want to reach clear to my audience. For example, when I teach an audience that I'm not, I normally just teach adults, but when I go in high schools or even elementary school, I want to access their brains in a different way. So I do this. I stand still, I close my eyes, and I say, Saraswati, help me. Just help me. She's shown up for me. And when I do retreats, when I do workshops, when I know I'm going to have a challenging conversation with my husband, even when I'm dealing with some awkward or uncomfortable customer service issue, I through recognizing her and honoring her, and that's what the mantra means, Om Shri Saraswati Namaha. It means I honor this creative source inside me, this inspiration, the muse working through me. And things just changed just like it did, back when I was at the Wanderlust, sitting there with my card in my hand, and things just started pouring and flowing through me. And this is what I mean by being initiated by Saraswati. So I'm so glad to have introduced to you perhaps one of my favorite goddesses. It's so hard to pick one, but Saraswati really is the one that really sparked a depth to my studies, my self-study, if you will. Find more about the Saraswati Initiation and ways to coax insight and inspiration in your creative life through the SheQuest membership course platform. As you know, you can always find me on EstelleThompson.com, Thompson no P, or on Instagram at estelle.thompson, THOMSON, where I'm the most active. Ciao, ciao, chiques. Bye.